Alright, I am finally back on the road again. Currently driving on I-70 in Illinois. Perhaps the most noticeable feature along this stretch is the cross at the crossroads near Effingham. For many years it was the tallest cross in the United States at 198 feet tall. However, it recently lost its title to a bigger cross near Branson, Missouri that was put up in 2018. So it is the second largest cross in the country now. I'll stop for a closer look another time, but gotta keep moving. The cross is located at the junction with I-57, so I got off on that and now heading south. This is my first post-lockdown road trip after the emergence of COVID-19 in early 2020, so before I have to go back into quarantine and lockdown again, I really need a stint on the road, even though in some ways it's a new world on the outside. I will be taking precautions, masks in public spaces, even in states that don't have such laws. I'm also planning on rigorous hand sanitizing and disinfecting like a madman. But still, this is gonna be fun, and hopefully not lethal. There's a golf ball water tower at Rend Lake. While passing by Benton, Illinois, I passed this cutout mural of George Harrison, which honors the time when Harrison visited his sister here in Benton in September of 1963, the very first time a Beatle came to America. First stop of the road trip is Mike's Drive-In here in West Frankfort, Illinois. It's been here since the 50s, and the drive-in might make a comeback because this is a lot safer than dining in at the moment. The service was super slow, but the food was alright. Now back to barreling down the highways. I did stop in Cairo, Illinois, a largely abandoned town at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers that was destroyed by its own racism. I made a separate video here and I would highly recommend watching it. Now about to cross over the mighty Mississippi River on this bridge into Missouri. Welcome to Missouri. I'm now in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and this is a very old roadside Native American chief statue. I am not sure how old this guy is. I think he's from at least the 50s. And while he's been repainted fairly recently, he was not in good shape for a very long time. And also, he used to be able to speak. There was like a little audio voice box in his chest, somewhere in there, and he would speak. Don't know what he said. That was a very old thing, was like to have speaking roadside statues. He no longer can talk, but that's still a pretty cool old roadside relic that has been saved from demolition and is being kind of kept up. There's a vintage sign for the Relax Motel here on Old Route 67. Now it's time to hit the road and hit a new state for me, Arkansas. Now entering Arkansas, or Arkansas as it's apparently well known. First stop in the natural state is Pocahontas, Arkansas, a small county seat in the middle of nowhere. And there's the old courthouse. On the lawn of the current courthouse is the Pocahontas Meteorite. As the legend goes, and the meteorite itself conveniently reads, it fell from the sky north of town in July of 1859 and stayed at its impact site until 40 years later, when the town's station master, A.H. Keith, took it and displayed it in his front yard. Over the next 50 years, relic hunters would whittle away about 2/3 of the rock before the Keith family finally gave it over to the city. I must admit that this is not a meteorite, despite what the locals believe. Scientists have analyzed it and there is no sign that it came from space. It's just a normal Earth rock. Along with the space rock gaff, the Art Deco courthouse also has some nice veterans memorials. Now let's keep on moving. Now stopping off in Walnut Ridge, Arkansas, at their Amtrak station for the Texas Eagle, which still has its 1908 depot. But what's even more interesting at this Amtrak station is the Guitar Walk. Walnut Ridge and Highway 67, which passes right through, has quite the rock and roll history. Many of the early great Sun Studio rock and rollers frequently performed at venues such as gymnasiums and honky-tonks along Highway 67 here in Arkansas during the late 50s and early 60s. This 115-foot long and 40-foot wide guitar embedded in the ground, which could probably be seen better from above, is a monument to that heritage. It is an Epiphone casino guitar invented in the early 60s. It ended up very popular among rockabilly musicians. Even the Beatles ended up getting them while they were still in Liverpool. Along the rim of the guitar are plaques honoring the Highway 67 musicians, such as the King himself, Elvis Presley. Before he was a big name, Roy Orbison would perform throughout northeast Arkansas, and he did wear the dark glasses even back then at the time to help his eyesight. He actually almost walked off a roof where he was performing in Pocahontas. These plaques do have narration.
Jerry Lee was actually phenomenal in his own. He was different from anybody else in the world. Nobody else played like Jerry Lee, played piano like him. He was a country singer, singing rock.
Here's Arkansas's own Man in Black, Johnny Cash. He would perform around here with his own unique style before he got into Sun Studio in Memphis, where he would end up producing many of his big hits. So the Guitar Walk is really awesome. But these American classics weren't the only rock and rollers here in this small Arkansas town. There was also a British invasion. A few blocks away is where the Rock and Roll Highway meets Abbey Road, home to the Beatles Park. This is not just a random Beatlemania overload, it's here for a reason. On September 18th, 1964, the Beatles themselves were on the ground here at Walnut Ridge for several minutes. This was because they were changing planes at the Walnut Ridge Airport en route to a weekend vacation in Missouri during their notorious American tour. A few-minute layover doesn't seem like a big deal, but that event was indeed the most important in Walnut Ridge history. Here in town, a tip was released that the Beatles were landing here, so many residents gathered at the airport to catch a glimpse of them. So now they have these cartoon cutouts of the Beatles along Abbey Road, reminiscent of the animated cartoons such as Yellow Submarine, there's an old-fashioned barbershop pole, perhaps because there's a barbershop here, or perhaps it's an allusion to Penny Lane. There's a poster for the Beatles' performance at Candlestick Park in San Francisco in August of 1966, their last big public performance before the rooftop. There's an amazing mural on the opposite side of Abbey Road, based on the Yellow Submarine era. I freaking love this. Walnut Ridge is awesome. Abbey Road ends with the Beatles Park, occupying a gutted out building. The main feature is this 10-foot tall Abbey Road album cover sculpture, with silhouettes of the Fab Four and an etched background. They were planning on putting this sculpture at the airport where the Beatles actually stood, but the airport wouldn't allow it because they didn't want the tourists. And you can even moronically pose like you're crossing Abbey Road with the guys. Walnut Ridge is still going all out on Beatlemania over 50 years later. They even have a Beatles Fest every September. Every small town needs to take a note. This is how you remember your 15 minutes, or less in this case, of fame. So, the Beatles in Arkansas. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. So that was day one of the pandemic road trip. Did mostly driving today. Only other video I filmed today was at the abandoned town of Cairo, Illinois, which is pretty interesting. I recommend you check that out. There's more to come, and thanks for watching.